The morning sun was already beating down hard on the dusty parking lot of the county fairgrounds when 8-year-old Lucy stepped out of her mom's old Honda. She had been awake since 4 in the morning, too excited and nervous to sleep. In her small hands, she clutched a wrinkled white envelope that contained everything she owned in the world, exactly $237.50. The money had come from everywhere she could think of. Her piggy bank had given up $43 in coins that she had been saving since she was 5. Her birthday money from last year, carefully hidden under her mattress, added another $50. She had sold her beloved pink bicycle to the neighbor kids for $60, even though it was worth much more. The rest came from weeks of doing extra chores around the house, washing cars for neighbors, and even selling her collection of stuffed animals at the community yard sale. As they walked toward the large metal building where the auction was being held, Lucy could hear the sounds coming from inside. The auctioneer's voice echoed through a crackling microphone, calling out numbers while people shouted back. Dogs were barking, and she could smell the mix of hay, animals, and the morning coffee that vendors were selling from small stands. Her mother, Maria, looked down at her daughter with worried eyes. She had tried everything to talk Lucy out of this crazy plan, but the little girl had been absolutely determined. For 3 months now, ever since they had gotten the news about the auction, Lucy had talked about nothing else. She had circled the date on the kitchen calendar with a red marker and had been counting down the days like it was Christmas. The inside of the building was much bigger than Lucy had imagined. Rows of metal folding chairs were filled with people, who all seemed to tower over her. Most of them were men wearing cowboy hats, flannel shirts, and boots that looked like they had seen plenty of hard work. There were also women with practical hairstyles and clothes that could handle dirt and animal hair. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing, except for Lucy. She had never been to an auction before, but she had watched videos on her mom's phone to learn how it worked. You had to raise your hand when you wanted to bid, and you had to be quick because the auctioneer talked really fast. She had practiced at home, raising her hand and calling out numbers until her mom finally agreed to bring her here. Near the front of the building, there were several large metal kennels arranged in a line. Each one held a different dog, and people were walking around looking at them like they were shopping for groceries. Lucy ignored all the other dogs. She only had eyes for one dot in the kennel, marked with the number 7, sat the most beautiful German Shepherd she had ever seen. His coat was black and tan, perfectly groomed despite everything he had been through. His ears stood up straight and alert, and his dark brown eyes seemed to take in everything around him. But there was something sad about those eyes, something that made Lucy's heart hurt every time she looked at him. This was Max, and he had been her daddy's best friend and partner for 5 whole years. Lucy remembered the first time she had met Max. She was only 3 years old then, and the big dog had seemed like a gentle giant. Her father had brought him home for dinner, which was something he did sometimes when they weren't too busy at work. Max had sat perfectly still while Lucy patted his head with her tiny hands, and he had even let her share her chicken nuggets with him. Over the years, Max had become like part of their family, even though he couldn't live with them full time. Because he was a working dog, he would come to Lucy's birthday parties, and her dad would bring him to school sometimes for the safety presentations. All the kids in her class thought she was the luckiest girl in the world because her dad was a police officer with a real police dog. Now, as Lucy stood in that crowded auction house, Max looked different. He still sat with perfect posture like he had been trained to do, but his tail wasn't wagging. He wasn't looking around with curiosity like dogs usually do. Instead, he seemed tired and sad, like he had given up on something important. The auction had been going on for over an hour already. They had sold chickens, goats, and several other dogs. Lucy's mom had bought them both bottles of water and a bag of peanuts from the snack stand, but Lucy was too nervous to eat. Her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies, and her hands were getting sweaty from holding the envelope so tightly. Finally, the auctioneer's voice boomed through the microphone. "All right, folks, now we're getting to our special section. We've got some retired working dogs here, all of them professionally trained. These are quality animals that have served our community well." Lucy's heart started beating so fast she thought everyone around her might be able to hear it. She watched as they brought out the first retired police dog, a smaller German Shepherd that looked nothing like. The bidding started at $100 and quickly went up. Lucy listened carefully, trying to understand how fast everything was happening. Sold for $450 to bidder number 23. The auctioneer announced, and Lucy felt her stomach drop. $450 was almost twice what she had saved. 2 more dogs were sold before they finally brought Max out of his kennel. A handler led him to the small platform at the front of the room, and Max walked with the perfect heel position that Lucy remembered from watching him work with her dad. Even now, even though everything had changed, Max was still trying to do his job right. "Now here's a real special animal, folks," the auctioneer said, looking down at his papers. "This is Max, a 6-year-old German Shepherd. He's been with our county police department for 5 years, fully trained in narcotics detection, tracking, and protection work. He's being retired due to circumstances beyond anyone's control." Lucy knew what those circumstances were, even though the auctioneer didn't want to say it out loud. Max was being sold because her daddy wasn't here anymore to be his partner. "We'll start the bidding at $200, the auctioneer called out. Immediately, several hands shot up around the room. Lucy heard people calling out numbers: 225, 250, 300. Her heart sank as she realized that the bidding was already higher than all the money she had saved. But then she remembered something her father had always told her. He used to say that sometimes you have to try even when you don't think you can win, because that's what brave people do. Her daddy had been the bravest person she knew, and if she was going to honor his memory, she had to be brave too. When the bidding slowed down around $350, Lucy took a deep breath and raised her small hand as high as she could reach. "I have $50. She called out in her clearest voice. The entire auction house went completely quiet. Even the auctioneer stopped talking and stared down at her. Every single person in that room turned to look at the little girl standing among all the adults, holding up her hand with the determination of someone much older. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever, and Lucy wondered if she had done something wrong. Maybe kids weren't allowed to bid at auctions. Maybe she had broken some rule that she didn't know about. Then the whispers started. The whispers that started after Lucy's bid grew louder and louder until they filled the entire auction house. People were turning in their seats, craning their necks to get a better look at the little girl who had just tried to bid $50 on a dog that was already going for more than 7 times that amount. Did that little girl just bid on the police dog? Someone asked from a few rows back, "What's a kid doing here anyway?" Another voice wondered out loud. Lucy felt her cheeks getting hot as all those eyes stared at her. She had never had so many grown-ups looking at her at once, and it was making her feel smaller than ever. But she kept her hand raised anyway, even though her arm was starting to get tired. The auctioneer, a man with gray hair and kind eyes, leaned forward on his podium and spoke directly to her. His voice was much gentler now than it had been when he was calling out the fast-paced bids. "Honey, I think there might be some confusion here. The current bid is $350, not $50. Do you understand how auctions work?" Lucy nodded quickly. "Yes, sir, I know. But $50 is all I have, and I really, really need to take Max home with me." The man's expression softened even more. "And why is that, sweetheart? Why do you need this particular dog?" Lucy felt her throat getting tight, the way it always did when she had to talk about her daddy. She had practiced this moment in her head 100 times, But now that it was really happening, the words felt stuck. Because double quote she started, then stopped. She looked over at Max, who was still standing perfectly still on the platform. For just a second, she thought she saw his ears perk up a little bit, like he might have recognized her voice. Because Max was my daddy's partner, she finally managed to say. And her voice came out much quieter than she had planned. Now the whispers in the crowd changed completely. Instead of confused murmurs, people were leaning forward, trying to hear. Better. The auctioneer set down his gavel and came around to the front of his podium. "What's your daddy's name, honey?" he asked gently. "Officer Robert Chun," Lucy said, and this time her voice was stronger. He was Max's handler for 5 years. They worked together every single day until ... She couldn't finish the sentence. Even after 3 months, it was still too hard to say the words out loud. But she didn't need to. A woman in the front row gasped and put her hand over her mouth. Then an older man in a cowboy hat removed it from his head and held it against his chest. "Oh my goodness," the woman whispered, but in the quiet auction house, everyone could hear her. "That's Officer Chun's little girl." The news began to spread through the crowd like ripples in a pond. People started whispering to their neighbors, and Lucy heard bits and pieces of what they were saying. "Remember that officer who was killed a few months ago? The one who stopped to help that family with the flat tire? Shot by someone who was running from the law. Left behind a wife and a little girl." Lucy felt tears starting to build up behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry today. She needed to be strong like her daddy had taught her to be. The story of what had happened that terrible night in March was something Lucy had heard in pieces, mostly from conversations between her mom and the other police officers who came to visit them. Her father had been driving home from work when he saw a family stranded on the side of the highway with a flat tire. It was raining hard and the road was dangerous, so he had stopped to help them change their tire and make sure they got safely on their way. What Officer Chun didn't know was that a man who had just robbed a gas station was hiding in the woods nearby. When he saw the police car, he panicked. He thought her daddy was there looking for him, and he started shooting before anyone even knew he was there. Her father died trying to protect that family he had stopped to help. He never even got the chance to call for backup or reach for his own weapon. The bad man was caught later that same night, but it didn't matter. Lucy's daddy was already gone. Max had been in the patrol car when it happened. The dog had tried to get out to help his partner, barking and scratching at the door until other officers arrived on the scene. But by then, it was too late for both of them. After that night, Max was never the same. The other officers at the police station tried to work with him, but he wouldn't listen to their commands. He would sit by the door of the station every morning, like he was waiting for Officer Chun to come and get him for their shift. When his daddy didn't show up, Max would just lay down and refuse to move for the rest of the day. The police chief, Captain Rodriguez, had come to their house 2 weeks after the funeral. He sat at their kitchen table with Lucy's mom and explained that they had tried everything they could think of to help Max adjust to a new partner. They brought in special trainers who worked with traumatized animals. They tried pairing him with different officers, including some whom Max had known for years. Nothing worked. Max had bonded so completely with Officer Chun that he couldn't understand why his partner wasn't coming back. Dogs don't understand death the way people do. All Max knew was that the most important person in his world had disappeared, and nothing made sense anymore. "The department doesn't want to do this," Captain Rodriguez had told Lucy's mom, his voice heavy with sadness. "Max's family to all of us, but we can't keep a dog who won't work, and we can't afford to just take care of him like a pet. The city council is already asking questions about our budget." That's when Lucy's mom had asked the question that changed everything. What will happen to him? Captain Rodriguez had looked uncomfortable. "Well, there's an auction next month for retired working dogs. Farmers and ranchers sometimes want them, even if they can't do police work anymore. Max is still young and healthy. I'm sure someone will want him, but Lucy knew that wasn't good enough. Max didn't need just someone, he needed his family. He needed people who understood that he wasn't just any dog. He was Officer Chun's partner, and that meant something special. That night, after Captain Rodriguez left, Lucy had made her decision. She was going to bring Max home where he belonged. She started saving money the very next day. She emptied her piggy bank and counted every penny. She asked her mom if she could do extra chores for money: washing dishes, folding laundry, organizing closets. When her mom asked why she suddenly needed so much money, Lucy just said she was saving up for something important. She sold her bike to the neighbor kids, even though it was her favorite thing in the whole world, besides her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts. She sold most of her toys at a yard sale, keeping only the things that had belonged to her daddy or had special memories attached to them. Her mom tried to talk her out of it when she finally explained her plan. "Sweetie, I know you miss Max, and I know how much he meant to Daddy, but taking care of a big dog like that costs a lot of money. We can barely afford to take care of ourselves right now." It was true. Since her daddy died, money had been tight. Her mom worked at the grocery store, but it didn't pay very much. They had moved to a smaller apartment, and Lucy had heard her mom on the phone late at night, worried about paying bills, but Lucy didn't care about any of that. Max was family, and families were supposed to stick together, especially when things got hard. Now, standing in that auction house with everyone staring at her, Lucy realized that her simple plan might not be enough, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. The silence in the auction house stretched on for what felt like forever. Lucy could feel her heart beating so hard that she wondered if the people sitting next to her could hear it. She kept her hand raised, even though her arm was getting tired, and she was starting to shake a little bit. Then something unexpected happened. A man in the third row, wearing a faded military cap, slowly stood up. He looked like he might be a grandfather, with gray hair and gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When he spoke, his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, but soft enough that it didn't sound scary. "Ma'am," he said, looking directly at Lucy, "would you mind telling us more about your daddy and Max? I think folks here would like to understand the whole story." Lucy looked over at her mom, who had been standing quietly beside her this whole time. Maria's eyes were shiny with tears, but she nodded encouragingly at her daughter. She knew how hard this was for Lucy, but she also knew that her little girl had something important to say. "My daddy was the best police officer in the whole world," Lucy began, her voice small but clear. "He and Max were partners for 5 years, and they did everything together. They helped find people who were lost, and they caught bad guys who were doing wrong things, and they visited schools to teach kids about being safe." She took a deep breath and continued. 3 months ago, my daddy was driving home from work when he saw a family with a flat tire. It was raining really hard, and the road was dangerous, so he stopped to help them. He always helped people, even when he wasn't supposed to be working anymore. The crowd was completely quiet now. Even the auctioneer had set down his microphone and was listening intently. But there was a bad man hiding in the woods who had just done something terrible. When he saw my daddy's police car, he got scared and started shooting. My daddy died trying to protect the family he was helping. He was a hero. Lucy's voice was getting stronger now, like telling the story was giving her courage. After that happened, Max got really sad. He wouldn't eat very much, and he wouldn't work with the other police officers. He just sat by the door at the police station every day, waiting for my daddy to come get him. But my daddy couldn't come back. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes with a tissue. Several other people were sniffling quietly. The police captain came to our house and told us that Max couldn't be a police dog anymore because he was too sad to work. He said they had to sell him at this auction because they couldn't afford to keep him if he wasn't working. But Max isn't just any dog. He was my daddy's best friend, and he belongs with our family. Lucy reached into her envelope and pulled out some of the crumpled bills. I saved up all my money for 3 months. I sold my bike and my toys and did extra chores. I know it's not as much as other people have, but I love Max, and he loves me. too. He's the only part of my daddy that I can still hug. By now, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. The tough-looking ranchers were wiping their faces with their sleeves. The women were openly crying. Even the auctioneer had to clear his throat several times before he could speak again. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "that's the most beautiful thing I've heard in all my years of doing this job. But honey, the current bid is up to $425 now. I'm afraid $50 just isn't enough." Lucy's shoulders sagged a little bit, but she didn't lower her hand. "I know it's not enough money," she said, "but maybe someone would let me work for them to earn the rest. I'm really good at cleaning and organizing things. I could wash cars or help with yard work. I promise I'm a hard worker, just like my daddy taught me to be." That's when something magical started to happen. The man in the military cap reached into his wallet and pulled out some bills. "You know what, little lady? I think your $50 is worth a lot more than you think it is." He walked up to the auctioneer's table and set down $200. "This is for the girl," he said firmly. "Add it to her bid." A woman with gray hair and a kind smile stood up next. "I'd like to add to that," she said, pulling out her purse. "Here's another $100 for Officer Chun's daughter." Then it was like a dam had burst. People all over the auction house started standing up, reaching for their wallets and purses. They formed a line at the auctioneer's table, each person adding their own money to Lucy's bid. $50 from the Peterson family, the auctioneer announced as he counted the growing pile of cash. $75 from Joe's hardware store, he continued. $100 from the Rodriguez family. Lucy watched in amazement as strangers kept adding money to help her. She had never seen anything like this before. Her mom was crying happy tears now, and she put her arm around Lucy's shoulders. "I don't understand," Lucy whispered to her mother. "Why are all these people helping me? They don't even know me." Her mom knelt down so she could look Lucy in the eyes. "Because, sweetheart, your daddy spent his whole life helping other people. He helped that family on the highway, and he helped keep our whole community safe. Now these people want to help his little girl, because that's what good people do for each other." Meanwhile, the bidding had completely stopped. The man who had been bidding against Lucy, a rancher in an expensive-looking cowboy hat, walked over to where she was standing. Lucy thought he might be angry that all these people were helping her instead of letting him win the auction, but instead, he smiled at her and tipped his hat politely. "Little miss," he said, "I came here today planning to buy that dog for my ranch, but I think Max belongs with you a lot more than he belongs with me." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "I was ready to pay up to $800 for him. I'd like to add that to your bid too." Lucy's eyes grew wide. "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Your daddy was a hero," the rancher said simply. "Heroes' families deserve to be taken care of. Besides, I can always find another dog. But Max only has one family, and that's you." The auctioneer was having trouble keeping up with all the donations. The pile of money on his table kept growing higher and higher. People weren't just giving cash, either. Someone offered to pay for Max's food for a whole year. A veterinarian stood up and said he would provide free medical care for Max for as long as he lived. A woman who owned a pet store said she would donate all the supplies Lucy would need, a bed, toys, leashes, everything. Lucy felt dizzy with happiness and disbelief. When she had woken up this morning, she had been worried that her $237 wouldn't be enough. Now, complete strangers were making sure she had everything she needed to take care of Max properly. But the best part was still to come. Through all the excitement and noise of people donating money, Lucy heard a sound that made her heart skip. A beat. From the platform where Max was still standing, she heard a soft whimper. She turned to look at him, and for the first time since her daddy died, Max's tail was wagging. When Lucy saw Max's tail wagging for the first time in months, she couldn't help herself. She let go of her mom's hand and started walking toward the platform where he was standing. The handler who had been holding Max's leash looked uncertain, glancing between Lucy and the auctioneer for guidance. "Can I go say hi to him?" Lucy asked, her voice filled with hope and excitement. "Please, I promise I'll be careful." The auctioneer looked around at the crowd, then at the pile of money on his table that had grown to well over $1,000. He smiled and nodded. "I think that would be just fine, sweetheart. After all, it looks like he's going to be your dog very soon." As Lucy approached the platform, something amazing happened. Max, who had been standing perfectly still like a statue for the entire auction, suddenly became alert. His ears perked up all the way, and his head tilted to one side, like he was trying to figure something out. Then his nose started working, sniffing the air around him. Dogs have incredible memories when it comes to smells, and Max was picking up something familiar. It was a mixture of things he remembered: the laundry detergent that Officer Chun's family used, the particular soap Lucy's mom bought, and most importantly, Lucy's own scent that he had known since she was a tiny little girl. When Lucy got close enough, she held out her hand the way her daddy had taught her to do with all dogs, even ones you know well. "Hi, Max," she said softly. "Do you remember me?" "I'm Lucy. I'm Officer Chun's daughter." At the sound of her father's name, Max's whole body seemed to come alive. His tail started wagging so hard that his entire back end was wiggling with excitement. He whined softly, a sound full of recognition and joy that he hadn't made in months. "That's right, boy," Lucy whispered, stepping closer. "It's me. I know you miss my daddy. I miss him too, so much it hurts sometimes. But I'm here now, and I want to take you home with us." The handler gently passed the leash to Lucy, and she wrapped her small fingers around the leather strap. It felt heavy and important in her hand, like she was holding something precious that connected her to her. Father. Max took a careful step toward her, then another. When he was close enough, he gently pressed his big head against Lucy's chest, right over her heart. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his soft fur. He smelled like the police station and dog shampoo, but underneath that, he still smelled like the Max she remembered from all those visits with her daddy. The entire auction house watched this reunion in complete silence. Many people were crying openly now, not just the women, but the tough-looking farmers and ranchers too. There was something so pure and beautiful about watching a little girl and a grieving dog find comfort in each other. "I promised I would come get you," Lucy whispered into Max's fur. "I know it took me a while to save up enough money, but I never forgot about you. Your family, and families don't give up on each other." Max seemed to understand every word she was saying. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and Lucy could see something there that hadn't been there before: hope. For the first time since her father's death, Max looked like he believed that maybe, just maybe, everything might be okay. The auctioneer cleared his throat gently. "Well, folks, I think it's safe to say we have a winner. The final total for Max is ... He counted through the pile of money one more time. $1,437, all donated by the generous people here today to help Lucy bring Max home where he belongs. The crowd erupted in applause, but it wasn't the kind of clapping you hear when someone wins a contest. It was warmer than that, more emotional. It was the sound of a community celebrating something good happening to people who deserved it. But the surprises weren't over yet. Captain Rodriguez, the police chief, had been quietly sitting in the back of the auction house the whole time. He had heard about Lucy's plan from one of his officers and had come to see what would happen. Now he stood up and walked to the front of the room. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice carried the authority of someone used to being listened to. "I'd like to say something, if that's okay." He looked down at Lucy, who was still holding Max's leash tightly. "Lucy, your father was the finest officer I ever had the privilege of working with. He was brave, he was kind, and he always put other people's needs before his own. Today, I see that he raised a daughter who has all of those same qualities." Captain Rodriguez reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out something that made Lucy gasp. It was her father's badge, the shiny silver star that he had worn proudly every day for 8 years. "This badge was retired when your father died," he said gently. "But I think he would want Max to wear it, as a reminder of the partnership they shared and the new partnership he's starting with you." The captain had brought a special collar with him, one designed to hold the badge securely. He knelt down and carefully fastened it around Max's neck. The badge sat right at the center of his chest, gleaming in the lights of the auction house. Max seemed to sense the importance of what was happening. He sat up straighter, his posture proud and alert like he was back on duty. But this time, his duty was to take care of Lucy instead of working the streets with her father. "There's one more thing," Captain Rodriguez said, standing back up. "The police department has voted to make Max an honorary retired officer. That means he'll receive a small pension every month to help with his food and medical care. It's not much, but it should help make sure he's taken care of properly." Lucy's mom, who had been trying to stay calm through all of this, finally broke down and started crying happy tears. She had been so worried about how they would afford to take care of such a big dog, especially with all the special needs that a retired police dog might have. Now the community had not only made it possible for Lucy to adopt Max, but they had also made sure she could take care of him for the rest of his life. The veterinarian who had earlier offered free medical care stood up again. "I'd also like to add that our clinic will be honored to provide all of Max's health care at no charge. Officer Chun helped my family once when our store was broken into. This is the least we can do to pay back some of what he gave to our community." One by one, other business owners in the crowd stood up to offer their help. The pet store owner confirmed her donation of supplies. The owner of a local grocery store said he would provide dog food. Even the farmer who sold hay said he would deliver fresh bedding whenever Max needed it. Lucy looked around at all these people, who had been strangers just an hour ago but were now offering to help take care of her and Max. She had never experienced anything like this before. Her father had always told her that most people were good at heart, but today she was seeing proof of it in ways she never could have imagined. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Thank you all so much. I promise I'll take really good care of Max. I'll make sure he knows he's loved every single day." Max looked up at her and wagged his tail again, and Lucy knew that everything was going to be okay. 2 weeks after the auction, Lucy woke up to something she hadn't experienced in months, the feeling that everything was going to be okay. Instead of the silence that usually filled their small apartment in the mornings, she could hear the gentle sound of Max's breathing from the dog bed beside her own bed. It had taken Max exactly 3 days to decide that his new job was to be Lucy's personal guardian. On his first morning in their home, he had followed her to the bathroom, waited outside the door, and then walked with her to the kitchen for breakfast. When Lucy's mom explained that Max needed to stay home while Lucy went to school, he had planted himself by the front door and refused to move. "He thinks his job is to protect you," her mom had said with a smile. "Just like he protected Daddy." They had worked out a compromise. Max would walk Lucy to the bus stop every morning and be waiting in the exact same spot when she came home every afternoon. The other kids at school thought it was the coolest thing ever that Lucy had a real police dog who walked her to school. Some of them were a little nervous around Max at first because he was so big and looked so serious, but Lucy taught them how to pet him gently and let him sniff their hands first. "Max, was different now than he had been during those sad months. At the police station, the hopeless look in his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like purpose. He had a job again, and even though it was different from his old job, it was just as important to him. Every morning, Max would wait patiently while Lucy got ready for school. He learned her routine quickly and seemed to know exactly when it was time to leave for the bus stop. He would stand by the door with his leash in his mouth, his tail wagging just enough to show that he was happy, but not enough to knock anything over. The walk to the bus stop became Lucy's favorite part of the day. Max walked perfectly beside her, never pulling on the leash or getting distracted by squirrels or other dogs. He was still a working dog at heart, and he took his job of keeping Lucy safe very seriously. Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor, had started timing her morning walk so she could see Lucy and Max every day. "That dog loves you more than life itself," she told Lucy one morning. "I can see it in the way he looks at you. You saved each other, you know." Lucy didn't fully understand what Mrs. Henderson meant until she thought about how different she felt now, too. For months after her father died, she had felt like a piece of her was missing. Having Max around didn't bring her daddy back, but it did make her feel connected to him in a way that nothing else could. At night, when Lucy was doing her homework at the kitchen table, Max would lie down beside her chair, with his head resting on her feet. Sometimes she would tell him about her day at school, about the kids who were mean to her, or the tests she was worried about. Max would listen with those intelligent brown eyes, and somehow Lucy felt like he understood every word. The best times were when Lucy would brush Max's fur while sitting on the living room floor. Her father had taught her how to do this when she was very little, showing her how to be gentle but thorough, how to check for any cuts or sore spots, and how to make it feel good for Max instead of like a chore. "Daddy used to brush you like this, didn't he?" Lucy would whisper while she worked. Max would close his eyes and lean into the brush, clearly remembering those quiet moments with Officer Chun. The community support that had started at the auction continued long after Lucy and Max went home together. True to their word, local business owners kept their promises. Every month, bags of dog food would appear on their doorstep, donated by Mr. Peterson, who owned the feed store. Dr. Williams, the veterinarian, had already given Max a complete checkup and declared him to be in excellent health for a dog his age. "He's lost a little weight since your father died," Dr. Williams had told Lucy and her mom. "That's normal when dogs are grieving. But now that he's happy again, I expect he'll fill back out to his proper size in no time." The police department had kept their promise too. Every month, a small check arrived in the mail to help with Max's expenses. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough to make sure that Lucy's family never had to worry about being able to afford Max's food or medical care. Captain Rodriguez came by to visit them one evening, about a week after they had brought Max home. He sat in their small living room, drinking coffee with Lucy's mom while Lucy played with Max on the floor. "I have to tell you," the captain said, "Max looks better than he has in months. When we first brought him to the station after ... He paused, glancing at Lucy. "Well, after what happened, we weren't sure he was going to make it. Dogs can die of broken hearts, you know. But look at him now." Max was lying on his back while Lucy rubbed his belly, his tongue hanging out and his tail thumping against the floor. He looked like any happy dog, not like the sad, broken animal he had been just weeks before. "He's got a purpose again," Captain Rodriguez continued. "Taking care of Lucy gives him a reason to get up in the morning. It's like he's still working with Officer Chun, just in a different way." The story of Lucy's brave bid at the auction had spread far beyond their small town. A reporter from the local newspaper had come to interview them, and then a television station from the city had sent a crew to film a story about their reunion. Lucy had been nervous about being on TV, but the reporters were kind and patient, and they made sure to focus on how much her father had meant to the community The story was picked up by other news stations, and soon people from all over the country were sending letters and small donations to help with Max's care. Lucy's mom had to set up a special box just to hold all the mail they were receiving from strangers who had been touched by their story. One letter in particular had made Lucy cry happy tears. It was from another police officer's daughter, a girl about Lucy's age whose father had also been killed in the line of duty. She wrote about how hard it had been and how seeing Lucy's story on the news had given her hope that things could get better. "Maybe someday I can be as brave as you," the girl had written. "You didn't give up on Max, and now you both have each other. That makes me think I shouldn't give up either." Lucy had asked her mom to help her write back to the girl, and they had started exchanging letters. It felt good to know that her story was helping other people who were going through similar struggles. 3 months after the auction, Lucy's teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, asked her to give a presentation to the class about courage. Lucy thought about it for a long time before deciding what to say. "I used to think courage meant not being scared," she told her classmates. "But I was really scared the day I went to that auction. I was scared that people would laugh at me, and I was scared that I wouldn't have enough money, and I was scared that Max would forget who I was." She paused and looked out the classroom window, where she could see Max waiting patiently by the fence for school to end. "But I did it anyway, because sometimes you have to do scary things for the people you love. My daddy was brave like that every day. He helped people, even when it was dangerous. And now Max and I help each other be brave every day." When Lucy got home that afternoon, Max was waiting at the bus stop just like always, his tail wagging and his eyes bright with happiness. As they walked home together, Lucy knew that no matter what happened in the future, they would face it together. They were family now, and families don't give up on each other, no matter how hard things get.